Hey, it's Jen Mack, Lady of the Mind. Welcome to Life Mastery Decoded, where I help you decode the struggles in your life in the areas of health, wealth, relationships, and spirituality with mind mastery, emotional management, and meditation. Welcome to today's podcast. Hey, ladies, it's Jen Mack, Lady of the Mind. Welcome to today's episode where I hope I find you driving your car freely down the expressway. It's a little bit of a weird start, I know, but it goes with the podcast for today. Some of you may know that Amy and I just went to another expo in Cincinnati, which is a lot of miles from our house. It's supposed to be like 6.5 hours, but for some crazy reason, it takes us like 9 or 10 hours to get there. Now, sometimes we stop and we do a little bit of shopping. This particular trip was a little bit different, though. Let me tell you about it. We're driving her van. It is literally full of all of our products that we sell and our displays that we use for our booth. And it is, all the seats are folded down. It is wall to wall, front to back, top to ceiling. You can't see out any of the windows. That's how full the van is. And before we leave, the night before, I think Amy was driving home from work and she notices that one of her belts in her car is squeaking. So we're like, okay, so let's drop the van off and let's, get the belt. You said the last thing you want to do is break a belt on the expressway. And so we go to our mechanic and we have the belt changed and off and running and off we go. The next morning we drop Cameron off to school and we come back and finish loading the car, get in the car and leave. And we're about 3 hours or so south of here. And we happen to be on a call for Brandon's school, and it's just a meeting, like a Zoom call. And so I'm driving and Amy is on the call, and something is kind of happening where she's intermittently cutting out of the Zoom call, and they're like, okay, Amy, hey, we can't hear you, whatever. And so she tells me to kind of take this next exit. We're going to park in a place where she can get a good Wi-Fi, whatever, so they can hear her. And so we pull over and we're in this little carpool parking lot right off the expressway. And so we're sitting there and all of a sudden I'm like, what is that noise? It's like this weird clicking, kind of a, almost like a flapping sound. And I get out of the car and I pop the hood and I'm like, oh, it's like totally coming from the location of the belt. But I don't see anything and I don't hear anything and the belt is still there. So I'm like, well, this is really weird. I'm like, okay. And so she now gets off the phone and she's like, what's that noise? And I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I said, it sounds like mud underneath the wheel well, when you go through some like really thick mud and it gets stuck all up in there and it kind of flaps around. That's exactly what it sounded like. So she said, what should we do? And I'm like, I have no idea. And so we start driving down the road because we're in this carpool parking lot. So we start driving down the road and it gets louder. And I'm like, what the heck? And I said, okay. Why don't we're in Brighton, Michigan, which is 3 hours south of us. And I said, why don't you get on Google and on your phone and see if we can find a mechanic near us. And so we pull in to this mechanic. He's recommended there's a couple steps in between there, but shortening the story, we pull into this mechanic and he pulls out his little pen flashlight, real great guy, looks down in there and he says, do you see that thing that's flapping? And I said, well, yeah. I said, but that's the belt we just had replaced. He goes, well, it's cut. It needs to be replaced again. He's like, something's going on that, is the tensioner or the pulley or something, he's talking all mechanic talk, Anyway, so we're like, well, what the frack, what the heck? And he goes, well, the problem is I have a full bay. He's like, I don't know that I can get to it. Anyway, we're all remaining pretty calm. Amy's a little bit upset at this point because she's like, we just had this replaced. Like, I don't understand how this belt could be doing this. It wasn't even 24 hours old. So anyway, shorten this part of the story, he does get the car in, not kidding. 30 minutes later, we are back on the road and he has replaced the belt. And so we're like, sweet, awesome, you're awesome, 5-star Google rating, you're sweet, this is awesome, off we go. So we go to Cincinnati, we're in Cincinnati, we're doing our show, the show's amazing. In tomorrow's podcast, I will talk more about the show and some of the healings and some of the activities we did at the show. But anyway, so now it's the end of the show. It's Monday, early Monday morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. We get up, we get ready, we're leaving, we pack up the hotel room, we get in the car, we're starting to head home. And we anticipate that we'll be home to rescue all of our caregivers that have been watching our boys and our dogs in the house and everything, that we'll be home by 4:30 or something. And then we're driving down the road. It's I don't know, noon. I'm driving again on the expressway. And not joking, we hear that same flapping under the hood. And we both look at each other and we're like, what the F? Are you joking me? And then we're probably, I don't know, we did not drive more than a half a mile, and it's flap, 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 flap. And then it stopped. And then it started again, flap, 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 pop. All the flapping stopped. No more noise coming under the hood. And then I don't have power steering. So now I'm driving this 4,000 pound vehicle, probably 5,000 with all our stuff in the car, down the expressway, 70 miles an hour, and I can hardly steer the vehicle. So I start to panic, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing? I don't have power steering. I said, we broke the Serpentine belt. And she's like, oh my God, whatever, what do you want me to do? And I said, all right, well, and of course I'm in the left-hand lane. And so I, of course, start slowing down. I take the next exit, and now we're in farm country. We had just crossed the Michigan border, north of Ohio, probably maybe 7, 8, 10 miles, something like that. So we're north of Toledo, in the middle of nowhere. We pull over, and there's 2 farms, one on either side of the road. We just pull off the road. The car's still running. We're frantic, trying to make a couple phone calls. We don't know what's going on. We pop the hood. There is no belt running on the pulleys. But the battery light comes on. So now it's now we don't have an alternator. We don't have air conditioning, which is okay. We didn't need air conditioning. We don't have power steering. We don't have a water pump. And I'm like, OMG, what are we going to do? So we start calling mechanics. We're like, okay, hey, you know what? We got this thing. I don't know where you are. We don't know where you are. We're going back and forth. We're trying to get the directions. We have to hurry because we're going to lose everything in the car. Pretty soon we won't be able to get the car started. The car is going to start overheating. So anyway, we get on the phone with this lovely lady at this nearby mechanic, or auto service. And so she basically stays on the phone with us and directs us. We're like, okay, this is the road we're on. And she goes, okay, you're going to start heading west, then you're going to turn left. You'll come to a stop sign, turn left on this road. And she's with us the whole time. The whole time we're talking and kind of telling her about the car, and we're going on. And we finally pull in, we make it. The car does not overheat. It was really tough making really tough turns because we have no power steering. And we pull in, and she's like, okay, I'm going to get the car in as best as I can. We're really busy. It's now it was probably 1:30 or so. And we pull in, and they start their mechanic, diagnostic. And she comes back after, 40 minutes or so, and comes back, and she's like, okay, we're not really sure what the problem is. We don't really know. And we can't get it to recreate whatever could be pulling or splitting this belt. And so we call our mechanic who replaced the belt, and we go back and forth with him. And he's like, we're willing to work things out. We don't really understand. We don't know. Let us talk to those mechanics. And so they're all conversing, and it's just this big long thing. We've been there for 3 hours. It's now 3 o'clock. She comes out and she says, here's what we can do. We could replace the pulley. We can replace the water pump pulley and the tensioner and, of course, the belt for $900. And we're like, say what? We just had this done twice, and this is the 3rd time. So anyway, now we're faced with this big decision. I said, is that the problem? She goes, we really don't know what the problem is. And so I said, so wait a second. So you can either replace the belt and we can get on the road and go home and cross our fingers that we make it and don't overheat or break this belt or whatever. Or we can pay $900 and knock on wood that we make it home. And she's like, basically, yeah. And I said, so there is no guarantee, no matter what you do, unless we go and buy a new car, that this car is going to make it home. So we're faced with this decision without knowing all of the variables. So she's saying, because we don't know what the problem is, how do we solve this problem? Where do we get the solution? So as we're sitting there, she finally goes away. We're now waiting on a call back from our mechanic to kind of help us make this decision. Amy and I are standing there staring at each other. And we're like, we don't know what to do. So we could pay $150 and just have them replace the belt, and we could be on our way and cross our fingers that we make it home. Or we could pay them $900 and be on our way and cross our fingers that we make it home. So we have these two choices. We can't spend the night. We can't buy a new car. Right? So we're faced with this decision, and we sit there and stare at each other, and we continue to ask about information from other people, the mechanic that we're sitting at, and then our mechanic at home, trying to help us to gather more information. Because if you're having a hard time making a decision, the only reason you're having a hard time is because you don't have enough information, or it's not time to make the decision. Just like asking a 6-year-old, what are you going to do when you grow up? He has no idea. Right now he's going to be a fireman. Right now he's going to be the president. Right now he's going to be an astronaut. But then when he finally becomes 18, 19, 23 years old, he's now none of those things. Now he's a banker at a mortgage company. So we're faced with this decision. We decide to go with the cheaper route because I would rather us spend $150 or $200 to get the belt fixed and be on our way and knock on wood versus spending $900 and hope that that's the problem. So we decided to go with the cheaper route. Because I'm laughing so hard about this story, we made it home just fine. The car did not overheat. We did not break down again. But what it goes to show us is a couple of things. One, about making decisions. And two, panicking does not add to the decision-making process. As I was driving the second time and driving from where we had pulled off on the expressway to the mechanics, I was pretty panicky. I'm watching the gauge and thinking that, we're going to overheat and we're in the middle of nowhere. Even though we're on the phone with this gal, it still has so many unknowns. I have had several cars break down on the road before. And it's very daunting. The time that you wait for the tow truck to come, and it's some big burly guy who doesn't have any fingers or teeth, and he is towing your truck or your car, and it's just like you're riding with him and he smells bad, and sometimes they're nice, and it's just this big, huge unknown. And then you wait for 2 hours, then maybe you get the car fixed, then you're delivered, terrible news about the car or what's broken or how much it's going to cost. And it's just this terrible experience, in my opinion. So as we get the belt fixed at $200 or $150, whatever it was, and now we're driving down the road, I am feeling pretty stressed out. I can't eat. Amy's trying to talk to me and, trying to, our normal conversation, and she's kind of in a good mood. She's driving now and she's in a good mood and she's feeling pretty good and on the way, and we're going, and I'm just like, man, my stomach was a wreck and I was nervous and just stressed out. And I just kept telling her, I'm like, sorry, I said, whatever it is that she was saying, I'm like, that is really funny. I said, but I am just really like in the red zone. Like I'm really stressed out. And as I was in the car and we're driving, I was thinking, what is it exactly that is causing me this stress? What is it? Like we're currently going down the road. The car's not going to blow up. It would just break the belt and pull off the side of the road again. So I decided to get to the bottom of it. I decided to get all the way to the base of what is it that I'm feeling that is making me feel stressed out. And it was about safety, my emotional safety, not physical safety, because I've been stuck. The weather was perfect. It was warm. It was dry. The sun was out. It was no big deal. So it's not like I'm going to be thrown out into the middle of a field in a thunderstorm and have to risk my life. It wasn't that. It was like this emotional safety. And because I'd been stuck on the road before, I'm going to call a tow truck, and then we got to wait, and then we got to get in the car, and then they got to tow it, and we got to go to the mechanic. We got to figure out. So what I ended up doing is just that. So I'm breathing deeply, trying to get grounded. All my energy was way, way up in my upper chakras. Like I just felt, when you feel unsafe like that, emotionally unsafe, or even physically unsafe, your energy starts to leave the planet. So your spiritual body starts to move up to the upper chakras, which is where we feel anxiety, overwhelm, some of those high nerves, they're in the upper chakras. So I start to try to bring my energy down into my lower chakras so I can feel safe and feel grounded. Then I started to play the routine. If we break this belt, we will pull off just like we did. Even if the belt flies off the car, We're going to pull off just like we did. We'll make another phone call. If we have to call a tow truck, we'll call a tow truck. If we have to be towed, we're just going to do that. We're just going to do the steps. We'll do what's necessary. And once I got to the end of that, visualizing the end, and then we'll get to a mechanic. Now it's later in the day, and it's like, okay, well then we'll call and we'll get towed to wherever, we'll tow it to a mechanic, and then we'll go find a hotel, and then we'll spend the night. We'll have to call, Amy's mom to make sure she can stay, one more night with the kids. And it's like, well, we're stuck somewhere, so it's kind of no option, right? So anyway, so once I was able to get through all of the steps visually, that's when I started calming down. That's when I started to feel a little bit better. My stomach started to calm down a little bit. My energy started to come down because I started to play through my mind what we would have to do if we were to go through that again. And we never had to. We never had to go through it again. We didn't have to call a tow truck, and we made it home. So when I look at this whole process, I look at a couple of things that are in here. We had choices when we're making the decision. Sometimes our nerves and our emotions can get in the way of us making decisions. And sometimes you want your emotions to be involved if you're going to make a decision and bring in intuition, because that is an emotional sense. But what we did is made a logical sense. And it was a very easy decision once we could narrow it down. So it was really, I can't say that it was fun now that I'm home and I'm pacing in my kitchen while I record this and I'm thinking about the whole process. It's okay because I'm home and I feel safe. Now, if we were talking yesterday at the same time, you would have a completely different recording on your hands. Actually, if it was, because I'm recording this right now at 1:20, at 1:20 we were still, I think we were still driving over to the mechanic. So it would have definitely been a different recording. But those two things kind of surfaced today. And I just wanted to ask you, when you are making a decision, what do you put into play that helps you to make that confident decision? And when you feel stressed out, what can you do to put into practice to get all the way down to the bottom of what's the foundation, what is stressing you out, and then to work on releasing that energy, that anxiety or those nerves or anger or whatever it is that's upsetting you, and then play out this worst case scenario to all the way to the end and just feel how you would feel and see how you would handle it. I can't say that I ever want to be in stressful situations or that they're fun or that they're any good or whatever, but I will tell you this. If you have the right equipment, then the things, the obstacles and challenges that are in front of you become no big deal. Now I can move through my life knowing that I have tools to help me, that there is going to be a time that I'm going to feel those really tough emotions. But if I remember to use those tools, then knowing that it's okay when I feel those tough emotions, that just makes me feel more confident as I go along. So I also wanted to remind you that we have our community calls that are designed to give you some more of these tools to help you along the way. So when you're feeling angry, you can do this. When you're feeling anxious or stressed, you can do this. When you're being faced with a really tough decision, you can do this. So I would love to have you join us. We have our sister calls coming up. We have one tonight, actually. So if this is Wednesday that you're hearing this, it was actually last night. But the next one is the 26th of April. And we are talking about self-care and self-love. And all in the month of all in the month of May, we're going to be talking about meditation, how you do it, where you can do it, how to build your practice and your routine. I hope that one time you will join us on the sister call and really meet everybody. And it can be very nerve-wracking when you don't know anyone, but there's really a great bunch of gals. And I just absolutely love the connections that we're making and the friendships that are being created because of this group. So if it's something that you're interested in, go to Facebook, type in Lady Rising. In the membership questions, just say, I heard it through the podcast. And I would love to hear how my podcast is serving you, any questions that you have, and I look forward to seeing you on the call.
If you liked this episode, please share this with 3 of your friends. And if you like this episode and look forward to future episodes, please consider making a small monthly donation to help support this podcast. If you're looking for a community to join and have more access to me, then consider joining one of my communities. Chakras for Beginners is an energy-based community that is highly active and growing every day. Lady Rising is a sistership community where the focus is on spiritual support and empowerment. We hold monthly calls and talk about topics just as like today's episode. We also have an online store where we can meet your meditation and chakra needs with products for your journey. You can visit us at www.themeditationroomtc.com. Thank you for joining me and being a valued listener.